9:15, this is the Senate Education Committee. Would you please all rise first and we'll say Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll open the hearing, and the first bill we have here is Senate Bill 434. And I believe that Senator Lang is the prime sponsor.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Madam Chair. I am Senator Tim Lang. I represent Senate District 2, which is the Lakes region extending all the way up to Campton and Thornton on the east side of 93. Which I have before you is Senate Bill 434. This bill is a reworked bill from last year. I want to make it clear because again, it seems like there's a lot of confusion around bills these days on what they do and what they don't do. This bill is a simple process bill. Nowhere in here do I talk about types of books other than to say that if a book matches the criteria of exposing minors to harmful materials, that a parent has the right to challenge that book to a school board. But it's important to make clear that when a citizen or a parent comes in and does something with the school board, that there be timelines and processes behind that. So this law is strictly to make sure that there is a standardized process for the entire state. The school boards can manage it. I put minimum criteria in here, but not the maximum criteria. I just say what the minimum things it must contain. In short, it involves just 7 steps. The parent submits a complaint. So in the bill, you'll see it talks about RSA 571-B1. I'll give you a copy of that law so you're familiar with it, right? So what it defines what harmful to a minor is, because there's been some discussion on what that means. We actually have a law on that under this. It talks about a harmful to a minor means that quality of any description or representation, whatever form of sexual conduct, when it predominantly appeals to the prurient interest of minors in sex, that is, in an interest in lewdness or lasciviousness thought, depicts or describes sexual conduct in a manner so explicit as to be patently offensive to contemporary adult standards in the county within any offense set forth as chapter is committed, which represents to what suitable material is to minors. And lastly, and probably the most important part of this section, lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value, right? That's the definition of what harmful to minor is. So again, if it's a violation in other parts of our law, and I'm not saying that anybody is doing this on purpose, right? That's not the point. The point is that as serving on the school board, I couldn't tell you what books were in my library, right? That the librarian manages that process, and a book can sneak by. And if a book sneaks by and is found by a parent, and they want to challenge it, I don't think this is appropriate. They should be able to do that to the school board, and they should be able to have a known process. So it's just not ignored, but there is a known process and timelines around that process. So again, what the process does is the parent would file a complaint, the school would start an investigation of that complaint, the principal will issue a decision in writing. There's a short waiting period of 30 days between that and when you can appeal the decision of the principal to the school board. And if so, you appeal it to the school board. The school board then investigates, and then the school board issues a decision. I don't think those are unreasonable steps. And when a parent goes and files a complaint, it puts timelines around those so every citizen knows what it's going to look like. And it's not a guess from school district to school district. It's not the parent can't submit the complaint and just have it completely ignored because there's a minimum process that has to be followed. So again, I think this is just strictly around parents having and citizens having a known timeline when they submit, no different than a 91A request. We have specific timelines around that. When someone submits a complaint, there should be a process. We're doing it in all of our state agencies and around permitting and everything else to make sure there are processes involved that have specific timelines. So that's what this bill does. There's nothing in here that's crazy. It's just a simple process bill that makes it clear statewide that it's for all of our school boards so they understand. and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair
Senator
Warren.
Prentice?
Thank you, Senator Lang, for taking my question. So why is it that a parent who objects to a book just can't go in and say, I don't want my child to be able to check out this book? Why are they making decisions for what other parents may or may not want their children to have access to? And granted, lewd, what you brought up, I hear you on that, but just purely from the point of view, if I didn't want my child to have access to a book, why can't I now go to the library and say, I don't want them to have access, without creating yet another policy and process for a school board?
Sure, absolutely. So I wouldn't want a parent to ignore what they feel is material is harmful to a minor. Maybe they may feel it's harmful to the child and they can tell a child not to read, and that's completely okay. But if a book is beyond that and shouldn't be with any child, shouldn't there be a process for someone to challenge that and ask that? Again, like I said, I don't think the school board knows what books are in there, and I don't think that's a detriment. It's just the nature of the things they manage and how they manage. They don't look at every book that's ordered by the librarian, every school that's in the school district. So again, I think having a process of having all the parents looking at it and saying, wow, this is beyond the pale, and I should tell somebody about it. And there should be a process to have that reviewed, so it's just not ignored, and it's not like, just Tim Lang, he's a crazy guy, I'm not going to even look at this. No, there should be a process. Even if Tim Lang is the crazy guy, the school district should follow a process to take my complaint. And I should know that there's a timeline, that I'm not being ignored. So the answer to your question is, you could still do that as a parent, absolutely. But when a book is beyond the pale or material is beyond the pale and a parent thinks that, we shouldn't allow other students to read it either. And there should be a process for how that happens. That's all this is a process, Bill. If a parent thinks this is so egregious that we should look at this, then let's look at it. And I think it's a lot better to err on the side of caution than allow a book in there that is terrible, that is horrible, that does rise to the level of exposing minors to a harmful material, and we leave it there because we don't want a process.
Any others? Senator Abbas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. Policy aside, and it appears that as it's written, it leaves a decision of the principal of that school. What's the rationale of having principal as opposed to superintendent? And the basis of why I'm asking, in Salem where I live, there's 5 elementary schools. So, in theory, one elementary school principal may have a different determination than another one, but it's the same district.
So thank you for the question. So that's the reason why, number one, we rise it up to the level of the school board. But the argument, if it's challenged, the school board would make the decision that would remove the book from the library. But the idea being, again, is that there's a slight difference, I think, between a principal in an elementary school and the principal in a high school. And what they determine is useful for the children of a certain age. And so having the people who are dealing with the children of that age understand that cohort, for lack of a better phrase, that group of children is better, in my opinion. I always like the idea of a decision closest to the parties involved.
Thank you.
Any follow-ups? Okay, thank you very much.
So, Madam Chair, I'm going to run back over to Elma because it looks like you probably have some testimony here that might take a little bit. Your aide has agreed to text me, and I'll come back for the second bill. Thank you.
Barrett Christina?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the committee. For the record, Barrett Christina, Executive Director of the New Hampshire School Boards Association. While we are opposed to the bill itself, I want to be clear that we're not opposed to putting something in statute requiring school boards to have a policy relative to allowing parents to challenge books or review books that may be in the library or part of the curriculum or whatever the case may be. Our prime opposition is that is the very extensive process that is laid out within the bill. The state of New Hampshire requires probably about 65 policies to be enacted and adopted by local school boards. There's only one that I can think of that is this prescriptive, and it's relative to the bullying statute in RSA 3F, 4F, I forget the exact number, where that lays out a process that the superintendent and the principal have to follow and some timelines and deadlines. But all of the other policies, dozens and dozens of policies that the state requires, do not have 3 pages of process with these prescriptive deadlines and who has to do what and who's in charge of investigating. The second aspect that we would have some objections to, well, we certainly agree that a timeline is appropriate so the parent isn't left hanging, waiting for an answer. The timelines in the proposed bill only work if one book is challenged. If one book is challenged, yes, you can comply within the 10 school days of notifying the parent. You can, notify within 25 days of receipt, within 5 days of making a determination, within 30 calendar days of making a determination. One book, that's doable. But I've certainly heard stories of parents coming in and challenging multiple books at the same time, 5, 6, 7, 10. So it would be quite the heavy task for a principal to comply with the statute, if more than one book is being challenged. The principal's prime responsibility is managing that building and that facility and the staff and students within that building, not running around trying to read all these books and make a determination of whether or not it's appropriate for children or not appropriate for children. The second another aspect relative to your comments, Senator Abbas, why the principal and not the superintendent. If we're going to go through, we would recommend that all references to the principal be changed to the superintendent. The superintendent is ultimately in charge of all staff and all the materials that are within the school, whether or not that's curriculum and books within the library. The school board obviously can determine whether or not they want a book in the library or not in the library, but ultimately we think that this would be a responsibility of the principal. And then if the principal the superintendent, and if the superintendent wanted to, they could delegate it to a curriculum coordinator, building level principal, assistant superintendent, or the principal might handle it himself or not, or herself. So another aspect too that I think is important for the committee to consider, we've had recent book challenges in many schools across New Hampshire over the last 4 or 5 years, and those have been handled appropriately through a local school board process without this bill and without a statutorily prescribed process. December of 2025, Merrimack Valley High School Committee's decision to remove a book from the required curriculum in 4 10th grade English classes in response to a parent's objection. They did that without having to have a statute. Dover, November 2023. The Dover School Board rejects an effort to ban the book Boy Toy from the library. They went through a process. They had a committee review it. The committee made a recommendation to the school board. The school board upheld the recommendation of the committee to keep that book in the library. We didn't need all this 10 days, 20 days, principal reviewing it. Concord Monitor article from May 2024, Bow. When Bow school board members met in April 2023 to discuss a particular book, they ultimately supported the district's media review committee report that the book was appropriate. Again, there was a process, went through everything without having to have this statute. Last, I pulled some sample policies, or not sample policy, but policies that are in place in your school districts. Exeter Regional Co-op, public reconsideration of library materials. Salem School District serves similar policy. Lebanon, policy on reconsideration of instructional materials. Claremont, reconsideration of instructional materials. I couldn't quite find the one for Manchester, Senator Sullivan. Their policy site was a little hard to navigate, but I think those are our primary points. The deadlines are not workable if you have more than one book. That should be within the responsibility of the superintendent. And we know that school boards have been able to navigate this and be responsive to parents without the statute in place. Again, we don't oppose requiring the policy. We think this is too prescriptive. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Senator Abbas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. I understand the 10 days and 25 days, and there's a 5 days, and it's your opinion that might be too tight of a schedule if there's more than one complaint. Yeah. Without endorsing the legislation, would you have perhaps a recommendation on a timeline that would be
Yeah,
Precise, but not-
thank you for the question. Notifying parents of receipt of the complaint within 48 hours, 72 hours, I think is reasonable. And then maybe 30 days, 45 days for the entire process to take place. A review, some boards, as I mentioned, will constitute a committee to read the book. We certainly think that discussing this and having the parent and giving the parent an opportunity to present his or her side of the story or his or her argument in a public session. So 48, 72 hours to acknowledge receipt of the complaint, and then 30 days, 45 days for the whole process to wrap up, I think would be a reasonable timeline.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. You said that you'd prefer it was elevated to the superintendent first, but also that it might be too cumbersome for the principals. Don't you think that if all of it, like a district like Manchester, if every complaint was elevated to the
Yeah.
superintendent, wouldn't it hold it up longer?
Fair enough, Senator. Yeah, I mean, it, is I've often apt to say, sometimes a statute, one size is not going to fit all. Manchester is going to be one thing, an elementary school that has maybe 100 kids, a K through 3. I would hope there'd be nothing inappropriate in elementary school, but that's a whole other conversation. But my point being, a school district with 12,000 kids is going to be managed a lot differently than a school district with 600 kids. So, I can certainly see that argument
All
or
right,
that
thank
point,
you.
that point of view.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Senator Prentice.
Thank you, Chair Ward, and thank you, Mr. Christina, for taking my questions. I actually have 3, but I will defer to the chair for each one. The first one is it your position, based on what you provided today, and I've had the opportunity to hear this similar legislation in the past, that local communities, including the one, my own, and examples you've given, have managed these concerns with their own policies?
Yes, that would be our NHSBA's contention.
Okay, that's number 1. Senator, follow-up? Okay. Number 2, is there anything stopping a librarian now from when a parent comes in and says, I have a concern about this particular book? And I'm not saying that, books that have been mentioned that, as Senator Lang characterized or appropriately characterized, go beyond the pale. I'm not endorsing that content, but I'm saying, is there anything stopping a librarian now from a response to a parent saying, I don't want my child to read this book, from them removing that from this child's ability to read it?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Senator. No, I mean, the NHSBA sort of advocated that take before. And, if you don't want your kid taking the book out of the library, contact the principal or the librarian. It should also not be lost that teenagers can get creative with viewing things that maybe their parents don't want them to view, whatever that may be. And the reality is the kid's going to get their hands on the book one way or the other. I understand there's a difference between having it in the school and, having your friend give it to you, because they bought it on Amazon or whatever the case may be. But yes.
Okay. And Senator Ward, just one more. Is it possible with a policy like this that is so, broad, that one parent's decision could override another parent's decision for what they want their children to have access to?
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Senator. I guess the guardrail to that is, while one parent may make a complaint that they don't want this in the library, the guardrail is that we're having our publicly elected officials ultimately make the determination. There is a review process that goes to the school board. And I always say, if the school board chooses to keep that book in the library and the parents in that community don't like that, the recourse is to elect new people to the school board next time around. So yes, I get your point about one person, determining what all the other kids get to read, but the safeguard is that we're going to hopefully go through a process, a committee review it, and then a determination ultimately made by the locally elected school board. And if I could follow up, Madam Chair, to do your question, Senator Sullivan, about Manchester, the superintendent may not have, the time and resources to deal this with however many elementary schools and middle schools you have. I guess what you might want to do with the language is superintendent or designee, and then that way the superintendent can designate that building level principal to take a look at it. That would just be another consideration. Yeah.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we have David Trumbull.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chairwoman and committee members. My name is David Trumbull from the town of Ware. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this bill. I oppose this bill for 3 reasons. First is, as has been stated, parents can opt out. Under New Hampshire law, parents have the right to inspect any instructional material used as part of the educational curriculum and the right to opt out of health or sex ed and any other objectionable material. Second is that schools should and must consider the First Amendment rights of other students to read and discuss materials. Schools and school boards have in place policies for the review of materials that may be challenged for use in the classroom, and you've been just given a list of those around the state and how well they're working. What distinguishes those policies from this bill is that the existing policies are designed to consider both the educational value of the material, that is the First Amendment right of the students to listen, as well as the concerns of parents who may deem them objectionable. This bill is not just a timeline bill, it's also a content bill. So I'd like to just take you back to the Supreme Court case of Board of Education versus PICO. And this was a First Amendment case involving a school setting. The U.S. Supreme Court said that the Constitution protects the right to receive information and ideas. First Amendment right of freedom of speech and press embraces the right to distribute literature and necessarily protects the right to receive it. So in other words, the students, not only does the speaker have a right to speak, but the other people have the right to hear that. Given that there is a First Amendment right for all students to receive information, we should be careful before denying access to materials to all students who might want it, especially when the concerned parent can opt out under existing law. The problem with this bill is it does not give any weight to the First Amendment rights of the child who may want to receive that information. And I urge you to look through the bill. What's to be considered at every single one of these stages is the objectionableness of the material. There is no mention whatsoever about the First Amendment rights that the other people would want to have. The third problem with the bill is the vagueness. Now, it starts with the phrase harmful to minors, and we all agree we don't want things that are harmful to minors. And that part of the statute refers you to another statute, which has a specific detailed definition. Nothing vague about that. The bill becomes vague when it then adds 3 more criteria to materials that can be challenged. If a parent thinks it may be age inappropriate, or otherwise offensive or inappropriate. Those are very vague terms. I challenge you to think and define those terms. What exactly do they mean? Let me give you one example about banned books. We know that 75% of banned books in this country, or books that have been sought to be banned, involved a character who was either a person of color or a person who's LGBTQ. So let's take the case of a youth adult book where a character is a child and their parents are in a same-sex marriage. Now, what if a parent in the community believes that same-sex marriage is inappropriate and they challenge this book? For them, that book is inappropriate. But this bill gives no credence to the concerns of parents who do not object to the book. Same-sex marriage is not only legal in New Hampshire, it's a U.S. constitutional right. So would this bill permit one family to censor the reading materials for the classroom of all children, thereby denying the First Amendment rights for the rest of the class? Again, I agree with what Mr. Barrett said. Having rules in place is fine as far as making sure challenges can be brought, but to call this just a timeline bill is not correct. It leaves out the other half of the equation, which is the First Amendment rights of everybody in the classroom. If you want this bill, then you have to say that when making this decision, the school board shall consider both, because that's what the existing committees do now, is they look at the totality of the circumstance, not just one side of the equation. Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Deborah House.
Good morning, there we go. Yes, good to see you in your new surroundings here. My name is Deborah Howes. I am president of the American Federation of Teachers, New Hampshire. I'm pleased to be addressing the Senate Education Committee this morning. We are opposed to this bill We do appreciate the need to have a clear collection review and reconsideration policy in every school district. I understand most school districts already have them and that they are working. Heard from previous testifiers of ones that have worked well recently, including in Dover and in the Concord area. So I would argue that the bill would be better focused on modeling the processes that are used there. Because the process that is in this bill does have serious concerns for constitutional rights of students and of educators. The main concerns we have, as were stated by previous testifiers, is that it interferes with students' First Amendment rights. Students do have a right to access a wide variety of materials in their public school libraries. It is a recognized and limited right, but it is recognized by the U.S. Supreme Court. We also have concerns that this process that is outlined does not fully recognize the need to get professional input on what is in the library and school material collection. So it sidelines the professional experience of educators and librarians into why materials are selected. If you're just relying on the principal to review a material and respond to a parent or community member's challenge of it, you do not necessarily know why that material is there. It relies on determination of whether a work has literary, scientific, or educational value. Those are very subjective determinations. So you are open to allegations that you are making close calls here on totally subjective terms. Why you want to wade into this when there are policies out there that balance these rights that are in use in many of our school districts already, that are working now, is a good question. This policy that's outlined here is not just simply setting out numbers of days, numbers of hours, and who responds. It is reworking it so you really have one responder or one designee. It's taking the professionals out of the equation. It's taking the ability for, say, a whole committee to read the work as a whole, which is a time-tested way of meeting the First Amendment concerns about collection, reconsideration into account. And it's taking all of these checks and balances that have been built into time-tested policies out of the equation and just putting in dates and timelines and one-sided complaint process. There doesn't seem to be an equal balance given to those who want to counter-complain and say, no, that book really does belong in our library, or those materials really do belong in our library or in our classrooms, or, hey, it's really important to have that science text available in our schools, even if by a narrow definition, it could be considered obscene because it does show something that someone would consider sexual. There's an opt-out provision for health class. Parents can use it. We really think that this bill would open up a lot of limitations on education, and students would suffer. All students, not just parents who might object to their student being exposed to a particular piece of material. Utilize the existing parental opt-outs. And if you want a uniform policy, look at the ones that are currently in use and working without court challenges, because we don't need to drag the state and school districts into further litigation. For those reasons, we urge you to find Senate Bill 434 inexpedient to legislate. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Yep.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. and Thank you for taking my question. You suggested that this could perhaps result in a First Amendment issue for students. It's my understanding that ultimately the school district or the superintendent decides what books are actually in the library in the first place. And they don't, I assume they're not going to just let any book in there. So I guess by them not allowing any book in the library, they're also restricting access or information to kids as well. So why is one a First Amendment violation, not the other?
This, with the subjective nature of the reasons you're allowing complaints, you're responding positively to complaints. You're saying, because of this complaint, I'm going to remove this book. Because it can result in viewpoint-based removals. And that's where it crosses the line into a First Amendment violation. So if there is a pattern of only mostly removing books that represent certain viewpoints, that becomes a First Amendment violation. You are restricting what students are allowed to access based on viewpoints. So if complaints are only coming or mostly coming based on materials that feature characters from, feature characters, from characters who are from the LGBTQ community, and there are many complaints about that, and those are all the books that are being removed, that would be looked at in a legal sense as a viewpoint-based restriction.
I'm sure I asked a follow-up.
You done?
Can I ask a follow-up?
He has a follow-up.
You follow? Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for my follow-up. I can appreciate that whether it's the principal, or the designee, superintendent, or their designee, if they're gonna perhaps deem something offensive or age inappropriate simply because of its content, without anything more, but wouldn't that fall on the school administration for how they're applying this policy as opposed to objectively looking at something and, the subject matter of the material aside, perhaps just they may deem this version may not be age appropriate. I mean, I think the school making the determination, I don't see why that would be a First Amendment violation, but to your point, wouldn't it, that if the school is applying it based on content, isn't that on the school administration, not the parent making the complaint? Because they ultimately the school administration makes the determination.
You're making determinations. One of the criteria is based on whether a work has literary, scientific, or educational value. That is not a black and white issue. It is a subjective issue. So you are exercising judgment there. Yeah.
Any other? Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. In your testimony, you
Yeah.
stated that First Amendment rights are limited.
Students' First Amendment rights in schools are limited, and yes, a previous testifier mentioned the PICO case. I didn't think I needed to go into that again.
Right.
So there are some limits on them, yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted to clarify that because a lot of the conversation was about First Amendment rights. I just wanted to
Yeah,
make it clear
students,
that in schools, they are absolutely limited. So thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, please.
Yes,
please.
Senator
Yeah.
Archuleta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, thank you, Ms. House, for taking my question. And it's kind of two-part. There's a differentiation between a public school library and a public library. And that differentiation would be, to the best of my knowledge, and you worked in schools and you represent teachers, so I'd like some clarification, if you wouldn't mind. Public school libraries curate their content and materials based on materials that will support curricula and also expose students to a broad range of topics. Am I right there?
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
curated by the professionals, right?
That is part of the responsibility of the school librarian, to make sure there is a wide variety of materials available to support the learning standards for the various subjects, but also have a wide variety of fiction available to engage readers at various ages in the school age group. to encourage literacy. Because the deeper and richer the collection in the school, the better the reading achievement of the students. The more the students obviously check them out and read them.
Thank you. May I
But it
follow up,
supports
Madam
reading
Chair?
learning. Yes.
Yes, please. So we've established that public libraries are different than public school libraries, and the public school libraries are curated by professional library science librarians. And we now have, as you testified to, mechanisms in place for objections to certain materials that already exist without this legislation.
There
correct?
are
That was-
opt-outs,
yeah.
and most districts also have, also have procedures to request reconsideration, yes.
So my question is, if a parent feels so very strongly that a piece of literature or materials that are being used within the classroom through the library at the public school, or that their child during library time has access to certain materials at the school, they have a couple of options, if I understand this correctly. Number one, they don't have to let their child read this and bring it home. Number two, they can request alternative materials from their classroom teacher, I believe. And number three, the state of New Hampshire will pay for them to go to a different school if they find the materials being taught so objectionable, right, through the voucher program. And number four, they also, I think, if we want to like be in the realm of parents' rights, looping back to number one, it's the parents' choice about what their children can do in their homes, correct? This is all about parents getting twisted up about reading storybooks about penguin dads is what I'm hearing the most of.
I'm
Did I read that correctly? From your testimony about options?
There are multiple options you have stated. I believe you've covered all the possible options. I'm just making sure I found the question there.
Yeah, but this doesn't apply to the schools that we send vouchers to, right? This wouldn't apply to the voucher schools.
Well, this is only applying to public schools because it would go through the school board, and it would be indeed only on the district public schools, obviously not on charter schools either.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Any other questions? I have one.
okay.
This bill outlines the process
Yes,
for making a complaint and how that complaint is carried through. And it seems to me that much of the discussion has been the end of the process, how this thing is now viewed and being presented back to the person who made the complaint. So we're discussing all kinds of values and opinions instead of just looking at, I have a complaint, what is the process for it? And I think this is what Senator Lang was put to.
you can't ignore what happens if you adopt the process, because the students in the public schools and the educators and administrators who run those schools will have to live with this process if you adopt it. So that's why I had to focus on that.
But you say the process already exists in some schools, right?
A process exists, it's not the one that's outlined here. That's why I had to speak to what would happen if this process that's outlined in this bill is adopted.
Okay.
And it's got flaws in it, and it will violate constitutional rights. We want to make sure that you've clearly heard that.
Could you tell me what is the difference between the process right now and the proposed process?
The process right now does not rely on one person to make the decision. The process right now does include professional input from librarians and educators. The process right now requires reading the work as a whole and considering a committee of people considering whether the work has literary, scientific, or educational value as part of the determination of whether it stays in the collection or not. It is, I know, I'm very familiar with the Dover process. It is a decision made by a group that includes elected school board members, professional educators, and parents. So it truly represents community standards, which is part of the Miller test, which is what the Supreme Court has used to avoid First Amendment violations, by the way. You might want to consider working that into any process you want to develop so that you do not run afoul of people's rights. Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay.
Brian Hawkins. You have decided not to speak? Okay. Anybody else in the audience who would like to speak on Senate Bill 434? Seeing none, that concludes the hearing of this one. Okay, that's those two here. Next, we're opening up the hearing on Senate Bill 430. And the prime sponsor, I believe, is Senator Lang.
I did text him.
He's coming, okay.
This actually goes with the last recordings of the steps. This one is- and puts out the decision. It does go. And I apologize, I was actually here on time, but someone insists on parking in my parking spot every day. Today was Representative Spillane. So I had to wait for cars to be moved
Talk to the
every day.
parking, waiting for Senator Lang.
I have a difficult time fitting in my space. It takes me about a good 7 minutes to get in.
Does she have a big
So I was here actually, I arrived at the park by 9:05. And I walk in at 9:09.
I better go down and get in spot, using my stick, the LOP,
Yeah.
because the parking lot used the entire.
I did that yesterday.
So I ended up not.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Senator Tim Lang. I am here as the prime sponsor of Senate Bill 430. And while I know yesterday was Groundhog Day, I think it feels like it's probably again today. You have before you at Senate Bill 430, again, the Honesty and Transparency in Education Act. This is again a process bill that requires if a parent, sorry, I'm out of breath, I ran all the way over here, so you did have to wait for me. So, again, this is just makes clear that when a parent makes a request for information to the school or teacher, that there is an obligation to respond, and there's a timeline around the response. It's as simple as that. Again, a process bill that just says, teacher asks something, a parent asks something, the teacher has to respond in a timely fashion and do it with honesty and truthfulness, not hide or lie. I don't think that's an unreasonable concept. I should have passed the bill.
Questions from the committee members, Senator Altshuler?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I don't have a heart issue, so I'm good right now. My watch is telling me I'm okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. So this bill allows, if I read this correctly, if a parent wants to seek information about their child that they don't feel they're able to get that information directly from their child, they can then go to the teacher and they have to ask in writing a specific question. And then the teacher has to respond in 10 business days. What's to impede a parent from sending a daily question?
I'm sorry,
And-
from sending what?
What's to impede a parent or a group of organized parents from submitting daily questions to a particular teacher to bury them in paperwork? So this is something that we've seen in our schools for right-to-know requests. So this is seems like a form of a right-to-know request that without any parameters on it, because it's really not a right-to-know request, it's just another way of extracting information that may or may not be satisfactory. How do we stop this from being a 180-day process?
So thank you for the question. First off, again, the right to know is a good law. It creates transparency in our public school systems, and nothing we do here is going to stop somebody from abusing the system. Or very little we can do here to stop from abusing once we allow a thing like transparency. But in this case, again, we're talking about a child, right? And if the argument is made that the teacher is a trusted adult, that's probably one of the most trusted adults, second only to the parents. So they're most likely to have the best information about the child besides the parents. And so I don't think we should limit when a parent asks a question. There's probably a cause or a reason behind it. And the teacher shouldn't make any assumptions, but just answer the question honestly.
Can I follow up?
Follow up.
Is there, are you suggesting a particular way so that it's uniform? So the response from this legislation would be a uniform response from every public school teacher, because I don't believe this also applies to voucher kids, right? So if there's a prescribed way that the teachers must respond, is there a prescribed way that the parents must ask? Are you looking for a form? Can it be a one-line email? Does it have to be on paper? Like, why is there not a way for the parents to ask that mirrors how the teachers must respond, so that there's some equality in there?
Sure. If you can make an exhaustive list of every issue with the teenager, I'll be happy to take that exhaustive list, but there isn't one, right? I've raised 4 children, and all of them are unique, and all of them are different. All of them had different issues. So the ability to create a form that would encompass all of those things that happened would be next to impossible. The question, I think the answer to your question is yes. The request must be in the form of a question, kind of like Jeopardy.
May I follow up, Madam Chair?
Follow
That
up.
wasn't actually my question. So my question, I also, like you, am a parent and have 3 very, very different children who were wildly different from all of their peers. This legislation, though, and we're talking about this legislation and not our own individual experiences, which I understand inform our responses to this. This is requiring every teacher who has anywhere from 10 students that they work with. Some special education teachers have 5, all the way to high school teachers who have multiple classes that they manage and can have, some of them, up to 60 kids on their roster. So there's no differentiation between the number of kids that a teacher teaches and how quickly they must respond to a written request. And there's also, what I'm looking for is, since the parents are also as varied in their request, is there going to be a uniform way in which the parents must make this request?
I think I answered that question. It has to be a question. I don't know that there's a form you could create that would encapsulate every possible scenario. And therefore, they would write a letter to the teacher and write, again, in writing and ask a question. I would like to know whatever the question is. And again, that question can't be uniform because not every child is uniform, right? And so I don't know that you can generate it. And again, I just make the statement that teachers are probably the second most trusted adult and therefore have a responsibility as well. And you can't ignore that responsibility. If the responsibility is they know about the child and they're working with the parent, they should be happily engaging in these questions and not pushing back against them.
May I follow up?
One more.
Thank you. So we've seen an advocacy group within the state of New Hampshire launch social media and print campaigns encouraging parents to launch FOIA requests and complaints about their school board. And if you're not sure how to do it, we'll give you a format. And the intention is to bury the school board in requests. And I'm not extrapolating that. That's what they're putting in their social media. So does this not set up another situation where an advocacy group who has a particular issue can then use their membership to bury a certain teacher or a department in innumerable requests day after day after day, so that it essentially hampers the teacher's ability to do their job?
I think what you're describing is civic engagement, and I support civic engagement.
Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking my question. Do you anticipate parents using this judiciously and only when they have a concern about the health and well-being of their child?
Absolutely. And I've made this statement before, having raised 4 kids. In every parental relationship, there's an ebb and flow to that relationship. I've had my children love me and I've had my children be really angry with me, right? And depending on where you are in that ebb and flow is how well you engage with your child, right? And so the idea behind this bill is that you may be on the ebb side, where your relationship's not necessarily that great with your teenage daughter or your teenage son or whatever's going on, and you know something is going on and you're concerned as a parent. So where do you turn? To the next second most trusted adult, to the teacher, and say, hey, is anything happening with my child that you're aware of, right? Imagine the idea that you knew something was going on and you didn't respond, and then that child hurt themselves. Children, when they commit self-harm, don't do it at school. They do it at home. So if the home is not informed of what's going on when there is something happening that's known to the second most trusted adult, is there any liability that now swings onto that second most trusted adult because the child did commit self-harm and the teacher or that second most trusted adult knew there was something happening in that child's life, was explicitly asked by the parent, and then wasn't told? So again, I think that this is all about what's best for a child. And again, parents know what's best for their child, and to helping them be most informed of what's going on with their child is only in the best interest of the child.
Follow-up?
Follow-up.
Thank you. Would you believe that the scenario that you just described happens to a family in Manchester where the parents were very engaged with their child and went to the school because they knew something was wrong and they were not given the correct information and the child was harming themselves?
So again, the goal of this bill is to make sure that never happens again.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Now we have David Trumbull.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is David Trumbull. I'm from the town of Ware. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I oppose this bill for 3 reasons. First is that children have a right to privacy and the right to make choices about their own lives. By the time children are in their teenage years, their thoughts and views about their own lives are important and must be considered. This bill creates a paradigm where the only actors involved in this decision are the parents and the school. And the bill gives 100% of the rights to the parents, 0% to the school, and 0% to the children. Children should have the right to talk with trusted adults, such as teachers, about personal matters. I urge you to look at the text of the bill. Where in this bill is the right of a child to have any input in this decision? It is not there. They are left out of this bill. Even if you look at something like divorce proceedings, by the time children are 13 or 14 years old, their input is given great weight by the courts. That is just goes with common sense. If you raise children, by the time they're teenagers, they have well thought out opinions. They have some rights. They don't have the final right. I'm not saying they should get 100% of the right, but they should be factored into it. And this bill, I ask you, look in here. Where is the child's right to have any input into this decision? And it's not there. I'm going to go out on a limb here and try a farmer analogy. I hope it works. If you've done anything with soil, you'll know that there's a soil triangle. You send in a soil sample. There's sand, clay, and loam. And you send in your soil sample, and it'll be located somewhere in that triangle. If you sent in 100% sand, it would be at this point of the triangle, 100% clay there, 100% loam there. In this equation, it's the parents, the child, and the school. This bill says that it's 100% for the parent. The child has 0% interest in this decision, and that leaves the child's rights out of it. Second is that the parents' rights should be balanced with those of their children. The New Hampshire Supreme Court in Doe versus Manchester said that while the parents' right to raise their child extends to the public school setting, it is not an unqualified right. Right there, it's not 100% and they based that on the New Hampshire Constitution. The New Hampshire Supreme Court also said that a school policy that does not force staff or teachers to reveal a student's LGBTQ status to the parents, quote, places no limits on that parent's ability to parent her child as she sees fit. And the court concluded that parents have self-help remedies, including talking with their own children. That's part of the obligation and responsibility of being a parent, is to talk to your own children. This bill pretends that parents don't have an obligation to start these conversations and actually listen to their children. Instead, they will go straight to a teacher. And the third problem with this bill is that the exception provision could damage family relationships between the parent and the child and may not be consistent with existing child abuse and neglect law. The bill requires that a school either tell all to a parent or file an abuse or neglect petition with HHS. A school may not have evidence of past abuse and neglect, but may have good reason to believe that a child who is coming out might be thrown out of their home if the school reveals everything the child has told them in confidence. It's not clear if this falls within the current abuse and neglect statutes, which do not include the words potential abuse. Nonetheless, if the school files that petition, the accusation will be investigated. The filing of the petition could cause long-term damage to a parent-child relationship that needs help, patience, and communication. Sometimes giving things more time is a better solution than either a child being thrown out of their home or a legal proceeding which will investigate a parent and then damaging the long-term relationship. This bill forces the issue when sometimes that is not the best thing. Children have some wisdom, they have some rights, they're being completely left out of this decision. This bill goes too far. Thank you.
Questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Amir, I am not going to try the last name. Is that you? Please come up. I can get the first couple of letters, but then the end part of is totally lost on me.
My parents wanted almost every letter of the alphabet in there, so. Good morning. My name is Amy Teravecchia. I am with 603 Equality, and I am here to oppose SB 430. My opinion today is informed both as an advocate and as a mother, and I have several concerns with the bill that I'd like to outline. So I'm going to echo some of the things that some of the other folks have said already. But educators and educational institutions should not be a pathway for parents, in my opinion, to learn more about their child's identity. This creates a concerning and, in my opinion, even dangerous precedent for placing public schools in a role of surveillance. Schools should be a place of learning, an environment of study for both curriculum, and a place of critical self-examination. Placing educators into a role of monitoring and reporting removes trust necessary for a thriving academic environment. SB 430, if signed, would also be detrimental to building trust between child and parent, as others have pointed out. It removes the opportunity for parents and children to build trust within their own relationships by having open and honest conversations. There's been ample research that shows that children who have big or difficult news to share with parents tend to have better long-term outcomes when provided with opportunities for them to share that information with parents directly. And although SB 430 references RSA 169C30 in order to grant protections and safety to children at the center of these requests, risk inside the home is often really difficult to ascertain for educators. And when put at odds with the threat of investigation and punishment an educator may face for failing to comply, it would again put educators in a role of detective and the public school system in the role of surveillance in order to adequately comply with SB 430 and also balance the safety of their students. It is for these reasons that I urge you to recommend this bill an expedient to legislate.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much. Senator Altshuler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Ms.
Tara Vecchia.
Tara, I'm sorry.
No, it's quite all right.
Vecchia, thank you. Tara Vecchia for taking my question. I appreciate that. So right now, all adults, anyone over the age of 18 in New Hampshire, which would include all teachers, are mandatory reporters if they are aware of a child that is currently being abused, sexually assaulted, in danger, neglected. They are required to give that information. However, I think you mentioned in this bill, and you referenced Part 2, lines 10 through 14, that that now teachers only outside of the scope of mandatory reporting now need to make a good faith determination, according to the legislation here, if there's potential or if the student would be at imminent risk of physical harm. So in a scenario like you described with the LGBTQ adolescent community, if an LGBTQ student was not ready or felt uncomfortable or perceived danger in being honest and open about their sexuality with their parents, but wanted to speak with a credentialed educator. So could be the, physical education teacher, could be their art teacher, could be their theater teacher, could be any number of people, not necessarily, your APUSH teacher. That teacher is now in the position of having to determine risk factors outside of the scope of 169C. And so doesn't that put the teacher at risk of possibly putting their student at risk?
Yes, I think it creates a really impossible situation. A lot of times an educator can't possibly understand what's going on outside of the classroom, going on in a student's home, and putting them in a situation where they have to try and determine the risk level of that student without maybe having all of the facts or information to weigh the student's safety, but also understand that they could face serious professional consequences too for not complying to this. I grew up, to share a personal story, I grew up with a classmate who was once told by their parents were upstanding citizens within the community, no signs of abuse or neglect, but they were once told by one of their parents that they would rather have a dead child than a gay child. And there was no possible way for the educators in our school system to know that that was a sentiment that their parent had. Had this bill been enacted and that educator disclosed to their parent, they would have been put in imminent physical harm within their home life. But there is no way for that educator to know that in that scenario. So to put a real world, story and context to the impact that a bill like this could have on a young person's life, it is, potential homelessness. It is potentially being put at risk, but it's very serious threat for some young people as well, unfortunately.
May I follow up, Madam Chair?
Follow up.
So we heard from Senator Lang when he introduced the bill that if teachers don't respond in writing within this 10 days, then in his words, they could, have contributed to the suicide of a child. Is that a fair accusation to put on a teacher that?
I mean, as you pointed out, educators and all adults in the state are already mandatory reporters. And I think that educators are always on the lookout for the mental health and well-being of their students. There are resources at both the school level, but there's also already things in place within the community system and within the school system for educators to contact parents if they think that there is a risk that maybe isn't at that elevated level yet. But I highly doubt that there is any educator that would knowingly or willingly withhold information that they believe would put a student at any risk, to answer your question.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brian Hawkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Brian Hawkins representing NEA New Hampshire. We are here opposed to this bill because first, we think it's unnecessary and could create further confusion. So first, let me just say that in most, if nearly all cases, there are a lot of tremendous relationships that parents and educators have throughout the state. I think it's worth lifting that up and talking about that, because I think that sometimes gets lost in the discussion that we're having around some of these bills. But what I wanted to point out is there was a bill passed, I'm sure you're aware of, House Bill 10 last year, that talks about the right that a parent has to make inquiry of school and school personnel. And that is different than what is, there are similarities, but it is different than what is enumerated in Senate Bill 430s. So one question we would have is, what is the difference that 430 does versus HB 10? There is a difference in some of the writing around the 10 days, the business days. There's in HB 10, they talk about when there's an initial request made, some leeway around if immediate answer cannot be provided. There's also the standard around completely and honestly, which has come up, I think every year this bill has come in. I think there was a testimony a couple of years ago around the fact that completely and honestly is a standard used not that often, that it's often bankruptcy proceedings. In some cases, this is a standard in which that's used. So I guess what is the difference for an educator expected to meet this standard? One of the critiques we had of both provisions in HB 10 and in Senate Bill 430 was this seems to bypass the usual process by which a staff member or an educator, if there was a question that came in that they weren't sure about, that they could go to their principal or supervisor and seek guidance through there. I mean, but this is a very hard 10 business days. And so there's a concern there. The other one is who is the arbiter of material information on whether an inquiry was answered completely or not. The honestly and completely standard in that hearing from a couple of years ago was pointed out by the attorney from the department that this was unclear and seems subjective and would be difficult to enforce. So that sort of goes to my point about what's the difference and why is this necessary and the inclusion of this in the code of conduct. There's nothing in here about what if an educator forgets to include something that arguably should have been in an educator's written response. And so there's little leeway in here for an educator trying to meet the standard that this proposes. Seems to be very absolute in the way it's written. So with that, I'll close my testimony and happy to try and take any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Senator Abbas?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for taking my question. The underlying policy aside, the complete and honest response. Why is there, I guess, a lack of confidence that an educator would not be able to determine their response is complete and honest? I mean, part of their job, they grade assignments and answers to questions that they put in assignments. And I feel like they would be able to tell a complete answer from an incomplete answer. And I would hope they can tell they're being honest when they provide an answer.
Yeah, and I think honesty is something that's very important, especially when you're talking about the relationship between a teacher and a parent. I think I would answer your question with the question of what is the difference between that and the current law. I mean, this doesn't seem to say to the best of their knowledge or anything. I mean, if you forget something, is there a leeway here in this law for that to be acknowledged? I mean, at least as it's written, I don't see that. So I don't disagree with you about educators certainly are honest, and so what I think we would ask of this is this doesn't seem to allow for any room for an educator to make a mistake, to forget something. If that's the case, they're held to this completely honesty standard.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm not disputing your point about, you know, it's an important component of that relationship, to be honest with parents.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Senator Altshuler.
Thank you. So we've heard a lot of hypotheticals. And so let me put a hypothetical out there. If a parent is concerned that their child is having a relationship with another child and wants confirmation from the teacher that they're aware of this, now that's implicated a second student, correct? So is the teacher breaking confidences or possibly endangering a second student by answering a written answer within 10 days, of course, completely and honestly that they are aware that the student whose parents have written to them is in a relationship with this other student, which the teacher has been apprised by the student that their parents would not be in favor of. And so now the teacher is in the position of having to expose information that may not be a physical danger to that child, but also entangles a second child into a situation for which they have nothing to do with these parents. So we have two kids, one has disclosed a relationship, or it comes about in passing and a parent needs to know. So they write a request, is my student involved with this student in a relationship? And now the teacher is obliged to answer within 10 days in writing, and now could possibly implicate another student in what could be a very sticky situation, or very uncomfortable for everyone. Is that what this bill is going to end up doing?
Well,
We're
I
going to
think
get involved with, the dating lives of teenagers?
I think this goes to the concern that was raised earlier about the difficult position that this could potentially put an educator in competing, trying to juggle and compete different interests, and also then, as I mentioned earlier, about determining what is material and then what is a complete answer, and whether too much details does violate either a situation like that or some other state or federal law where complete disclosure might risk a student's safety or create another situation. So I think that was raised earlier. I think it potentially does put an educator in a difficult position.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That concludes the people who have signed up to speak. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to this bill? Anyone? If not, this closes the hearing. Senate Education Committee. We will take a 5-minute break, and then the committee is going into executive session. Need a motion to go into executive hearing.
Motion, go into executive session.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, good. Okay, let's go through the bills that we have done in the past. Starting off with 429.
I'd like to make a motion to pass on Senate Bill 429.
Do we have a second? Any discussion on it?
I just want to, Senator Ward,
Yes.
quickly, I'm going to, when this gets to, if we can pass this as policy committee, I'm going to talk to the finance committee because I believe that the fiscal note does not reflect the true cost of this, which is much less. The requirement in this bill to put actual physical boxes on walls does not, if a school wants to do that, they can do it. We just need to provide the tourniquets, which are basically $23 a piece.
Okay.
So I'm going to take that up with finance, but if we can pass this as a policy, I'll address it with the finance committee.
Okay.
Thank you.
All those in favor of OTP?
Aye.
Aye. So that's 5-0.
Move for consent?
Do you want to put it on consent or do you want to do something?
Second.
Consent's good. Oh, sorry.
Okay, consent?
Aye.
Aye.
That's 5-0. You want to take it up, Senator Prentice?
I'd be happy to, thank you.
Okay.
Ready for the next one?
The next one is
432?
432.
Would you like me to make a motion to pass on Senate Bill 432? And I know you have an amendment, Senator
Yep.
Ward? So we'll need to get a second and we'll do
I'll
that.
second.
And I have the amendment.
Beautiful, thank you.
Amendment 0090S. As the authorized in the application of sunscreen without a licensed healthcare provider, allowing the kids to do it on their own without having to have a prescription. So we have vote on the amendment.
We have the amendment right here. I'll pass it over to you.
And it's 0090?
Yep.
Move
have-
ought to
is it on my
pass
desk?
on the amendment?
What?
Move ought to pass on the amendment?
I think we have to adopt the amendment.
That's what I just.
Do we have
well,
a second on the amendment?
Well, that's what I was saying, is we should adopt the amendment. Ought to pass on amendment. No worries.
Do I have a second?
Let's just
Okay.
pass it.
So the amendment is passing, and what about the underlying bill with the amendment?
Motion,
We need to vote.
I think we had a vote on the
We
amendment.
had a vote on ought to pass, and how many
No, I
of,
think we got a second.
Maybe
and
not, we
a
got a
vote.
second.
all those in favor of ought to pass?
As
Aye.
amended. Aye.
Aye.
And consent?
So moved.
Now we need to do it ought to pass as amended.
Motion not to pass is amended.
Second.
All those in favor of passing it with the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I'll take that one out.
Now
since
move
it's-
for consent? Can we put that up, can I make a motion to put that on consent?
Second.
Consent,
Yes. Second?
5-0,
Okay.
and the board will take it out.
Are you ready for the next one?
433,
I'd like to make a motion to pass on Senate Bill 433.
a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion on ought to pass on 433? All those in favor of ought to pass on 433?
Aye.
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 Aye, it's 5-0.
Move to consent?
Second.
All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye, it's 5-0. And who wants to take it out? The seizures, safe school?
I'll take it out.
Prentice will take it out.
Prentice will, yes, thank you. Prentice will do it.
517.
I'd like to make a motion to pass on Senate Bill 517.
That's the food bill.
It is, it's an opt-in food bill sponsored by Senator Fenton and Senator Lang.
I think certainly it's an issue that we all care about. And there's nothing mentioned about what the cost is going to be on it, which concerns me a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think that what we can do is to pass it here and send it to the finance, which is going to go there anyhow and let them make that decision.
That's correct. And Senator Moore, if I may, I mean, because this is an option, not, it's an option for school districts, I think it provides, I mean, we need the fiscal analysis clearly, but it provides that wiggle room for communities that don't want to do it versus those who do, depending on their circumstances.
I think the 200% above the 200% above the federal poverty line, you know, we're talking about a family of four, that's under $100,000 a year, we're talking, you know.
So I have an ought to pass on this one. Any further discussion? What?
I think,
And how many voting in favor of ought to pass?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes, 5-0. And you want to put it on consent?
Move for consent?
Second?
no, you got it.
All those in
Open
favor of
this a little
consent?
out.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that's 5-0. Who wants to take it out? Abbas, you want to take it out?
Sure.
Okay. Senator Abbas will take it out.
Let me know when you're ready.
531.
I move ought to pass on Senate Bill 531.
I'll
Do we have
second.
a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion on 531? All those in favor, all vote to P on 531.
Aye.
Aye.
It's 5-0. Consent?
Second.
All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye.
It's 5-0. Senator Altshuler, do you want to take that up?
Sure.
Okay.
My pleasure.
You got that, Trevor? Okay. Okay. 577.
I move on to pass.
I'll second it.
I have ought to pass on it.
We have discussion?
I'll just say that I really like the policy. I'm concerned about the financial issues, and I would hope the finance committee can do their work on this one and figure out if it's actually feasible. I think that really says that whether it's feasible, at least at this time.
And there's no, well, I'm curious because it says higher food costs is what they're anticipating, but it seems to me that the way it's going, they're taking all the food calories out. So I wondered how long we're gonna have colored food, whether that's gonna be on this way out and there's not gonna be too much of a problem buying anything. Yes.
So thank you. I recall our conversation during the testimony, and I'm regretting it now, but I was grocery shopping with my daughter this weekend, and we actually came across, now that my eyes are looking for it because we had this hearing, so many products that have switched over to natural food colorings using strawberry powders, beets for red, turmeric for yellow. And I thought, oh, this is actually a thing that I wasn't paying all that much attention to. So it's not that we won't be using food color. In fact, what I saw was a ton of candies too, because it's Valentine's Day, so there was a big display, but also in some of the prepared products. And nonetheless, it occurred to me that oh, okay, this is just a change of preparation, because these colors existed before, red dye number 40. We were making things pink, but it was just easier to do it with a chemical than it was a food. So I think like it's a nice switch back to, it's not that everything's going to be bland, it's just going to be flavored, colored with a natural food coloring. Yeah.
Senator Evans?
And I can say this, and this was not information I was really digging in for, but whenever I'm taking my kids out and their friends, and I'm the one responsible for everyone, which some people may think that's hard to believe that happens, but it does. I always ask their parents, are there any food dietary restrictions, whatever, peanut out, whatever? And they always say no red dyes, and this is the one request I'm almost getting from every, so I'm confident that a lot of parents would prefer this not to be in there. And say, oh, yeah, I heard about this. And then they start going on about their research they've done.
Right.
So
Any other discussion? Senator Sullivan?
So I do support the idea of this bill. I have serious concerns about the fact that a lot of food, it's not like when we were in school and things were prepared in the cafeterias. A lot of the foods are pre-purchased, frozen and otherwise. And I'm just concerned about the food supply, that we might be restricting the food supply for kids in our state, or the buying power of schools to get food to them. I'm going to vote for it because I believe in it in theory, but I do have a concern where there isn't any wiggle room for schools if they can't get foods that don't have these dyes, because we're moving there as a country, we're not there yet. So I don't want to be in a position where we can't feed kids because the only chicken nuggets have the yellow food coloring in it, or so I just want to express that concern. I don't know how we get around that at this time. Maybe we could have an amendment that says if they can't purchase the foods with this, we give them some grace period, some time. Because we just don't know that foods are produced this way currently, and especially in where schools are buying in bulk.
Well, this is taking effect on January 1, 2028. So there is some time. Do you want to take it out and speak on the floor to it?
Sure,
Not put it on consent, but speak to them.
sure.
Okay.
Just so we have the concerns, maybe that helps people think ahead
Right.
about that fact.
So we have out to pass 5-0, and we're not going to put it on consent. Senator Sullivan will take it out, and she will discuss her concern.
Okay.
The what?
Oh, yeah, we didn't actually all vote.
Yeah.
Thank you for keeping the trains running.
Okay, what do we have on it?
We just have to have an official vote.
On ought to pass? I thought we had done that. Okay, ought to pass.
Aye.
5-0, and we're not going to put it on consent. Senator Sullivan would like to speak on it. Okay? By January 28, I have a feeling a lot of things have taken place.
why are they putting food dye in chicken nuggets?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
578.
And I just took a picture and asked you a question. Okay, thanks. Yes, yes, please. Are we there now? Are we on 578?
578 has to do with a recess. Did you have an
Okay.
amendment on it?
Yes, I do have an amendment that's being passed around right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, and could I speak to my amendment?
Yep.
Madam
let's
Chair?
have-
Can we have just 2
Vote on the
minutes
bill
just to give it a
first.
read?
Yep, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Okay. Ought to pass on 578?
I'll
Yes,
second.
no?
Senator Alschiller is asking for a moment just to
Just,
review
just
the-
to look,
Okay.
take a look at the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. So I made two changes based on feedback that we received during the hearing. One is that this recess can be used as instructional time, so we're not adding to the school day. And the other was a concern from, regarding for safety issues, to be able to pull a child out of recess for safety issues. So those two items have been addressed in this amendment, and I'd like to make a motion of ought to pass.
All those in favor of passing
Are we
the
discussing
amendment?
it? Are we discussing?
Yeah, so I'm doing an ought to pass on the underlying
Okay,
bill
we can further
first.
discuss it.
Underlying bill?
Yes, this is an ought to pass the underlying bill.
Madam Chair, I think first there needs to be a motion of ought to pass.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Well,
just
yeah.
did that. Do you want a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Out to pass on the amendment.
No, ought to pass on the
Yeah,
underlying.
right, right.
Yeah, so we have to vote on that.
Okay, how many are ought to pass on the?
No, no, I don't
Wait a
believe,
minute, wait a minute. How many are voting ought to pass on the bill?
No.
we don't want to vote yet.
No, we want to vote on the bill, and then we take it up with the amendment, and then we vote the underlying bill with the amendment.
No, we accept the amendment, so we move ought to pass, then someone moves the amendment, then we accept the amendment, then we vote ought to pass.
Okay,
Okay. So I'll move the amendment. 2026-0304S.
all those in favor of ought to pass on the amendment?
Can we discuss the amendment, Madam Chair?
Yes?
Thank you. May I? Yeah, so following the hearing of this bill, which actually was a day that I had, that evening, a joint school board committee meeting in the Winnicott School District. And so we had 4 different towns present. And what is highlighted in this amendment was exactly the red flag that all of the administrators brought up, that they would be most concerned happening, is that in order to have more recess, we would count that as physical education curriculum, and then that would end up pushing out a physical education curriculum in order to meet this mandate of having more recess. And there was a lot of pushback on wanting to keep a physical education curriculum available to their students. This was from my school boards as well. So this is not a popular position. Nobody thinks that kids shouldn't have more time, but also, if we're going to do that time, there should be some physical education curriculum. And we shouldn't be leaving a space to cut budgets on the backs of a physical education curriculum in favor of just more unstructured recess. So for those reasons, for my district, I will be voting no on this amendment.
Do you want to respond to that?
I'm just taking up a side discussion.
Can I ask,
Physical education.
ask a question of my colleague? So with this amendment, you have, obviously, is this time, allocate time for recess.
Mhm.
And it's allowing that to count as part of the physical education.
Not replacing it, but as part of.
Okay. And that, my understanding, the point of this is to make it so the school day doesn't have to be
Extended,
extended.
correct.
Is there any other wiggle room that the schools have that perhaps, I'm just saying, 'cause I think this makes it at least, my issue was making the school day longer. I wasn't going to support it. I think this addresses that.
Yes.
But is this going to cut into anything else? I'm just curious.
It should not.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
It also addresses my,
Senator Prentice, you have your hand up. Did you want to?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay,
So
can
I'd
we-
like to make a motion of ought to pass as amended.
So
No, we have to
No?
vote on the amendment first.
Okay, we're voting to accept the amendment first.
Okay. Who is in favor of ought to pass on the amendment?
Aye.
Accepting.
Aye. How many? 4.
Nay.
Okay, 4-1. Okay. Now we go back to the underlying bill. The underlying bill. we
Now,
have an
I'd
ought to
like
pass
to
on
make
it with
an
the
ought
amendment.
to pass as amended.
I'll second.
Okay, who's in favor of ought to pass with the underlying bill with the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 4-1. Okay, who wants to take, do you want to take
I will
that?
take it.
Senator Sullivan will take it out.
Madam Chair, would that, and I'll ask my colleague, could that still go on consent with a 4-1?
Yeah, we could go on the, on the,
Is there any objection to consent?
Yes.
do you want it on the consent?
No.
Isn't it?
Senator Sullivan, do you want it on consent?
I believe we have an.
We have 4-1.
And I think it has, doesn't have to be unanimous?
No, does it have to be
The
unanimous?
vote doesn't, but the vote to put it on consent has to be unanimous. Senator Altshuler.
All right, it's okay. I'll take it up.
Whenever the committee wants to not put it on, keep it in consent and speak to it, then I'm good with that. Yeah,
On consent?
not on consent.
Not on
Not on
consent,
consent.
okay. And Sullivan will take it out, so. Let's see. 579.
Madam Chair, I move an expedient to legislate.
I'm
And
gonna
Altshuler moves ITL.
And I'm going to second that if I can speak to it, please.
Okay, any discussion?
Thank you. I think given last week's Senate action that relates to open enrollment, that there's an underlying conflict between the two of these. So the most expedient, practical way to deal with this is to not move it forward. My opinion.
Can I speak? So I don't disagree with that. However, that's not law yet. So I'd like to keep this in motion in case that doesn't become law. And we have this for the kids in the SAU. If it does become law, this isn't needed anymore. But if it doesn't get signed into law, these still needed.
So I have an ITL on 579 with a second.
Madam Chair?
Senator
This,
Altshuler?
yeah, so the open enrollment actually got fast-tracked. So, I mean, I don't know that there's any expectation that it's not going to be signed, so this actually is redundant, particularly on a fast-tracked bill.
I have a lot of questions on it, and I really, personally, I would like to have a little bit more time to take a look at it.
So would you prefer not to vote on it today?
Senator Ward, can I,
We don't have to vote on it today. We can vote on it next Tuesday and address some of the concerns. Senator Prentice?
I was going to suggest potentially an interim study. I mean, there is always the room to flip something on the floor. I mean, I think this is a place where we're not all going to agree based on what's, this other bill that it has been fast-tracked and is headed over to the House. We don't know what the future of that is, but it seems that that's moving forward pretty quickly. We can either not vote on this today and withdraw the motion, or we can interim study it, and the prime sponsor has the opportunity to try to make a motion different on the floor.
I'll support that. That gives us just some time to see what happens on the road.
Okay,
So let's withdraw it. I think that's the way.
so you're going to withdraw, we're going to hold off on this bill until next
I
week.
withdraw my inexpedient to legislate motion
Thank you.
with the intention of moving interim study.
I'll second interim study.
You want interim study instead?
That's what.
I was
you
going to
did-
hold off. You
I
you
thought
withdraw your
Senator
motion to
Prentice and
IPL.
I'm okay with interim study.
You okay with interim study?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, have a vote. I have a motion to interim study the Bill D 579, and I have a second. All those in favor of interim study?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0. You want to put this on consent?
So moved.
You could ask for it.
All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
5, 0. Okay. Who should take it out? You want to take it out? Okay. Senator Abbas will take it out. Okay, 580.
So,
We have an amendment coming forward for 580.
so let's do an underlying and then, we can- so Senator Ward, I'm going to move interim study on 580. And I'm happy to speak to it. We get to that point where I want to go this
Thank
route,
you.
but I'll need a second, and I know there's an
580,
amendment.
580.
Okay, let me read it.
I made a motion for interim study.
I need to take a look at this, the amendment.
Section. Replacing section 3.
Okay. So essentially, this actually, section 3 is being replaced. Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, originally had concerns with this bill because there was very little information on the cost, and I had some problems with the DOE being appointed to take the schools into receivership if there was any issues. Senator Sullivan, do you want to speak to your amendment?
Yeah, sure. So the amendment just, I worked with the School Board Association, and we worked on clearing up some of the rules and clarifying that it's for the school boards. There was, the local school boards, there was some confusion during the hearing that people thought that that was for the board, the State Board of Education, and we clarified that it's for local school boards. And the rest of the bill remained the same. So it does, as we know with Claremont, we've had a lot of people with concerns about other districts as well. So it does allow the school board, the State Board of Education, to step in and have receivership to guide districts through a very difficult time, help them through the process of getting back on their feet. And then it has the purchasing power where local or smaller districts will have the same purchasing power as larger districts because they're going through that.
And you have been in close contact with the Department of Education?
I have.
So they are aware of what is being proposed?
Yes,
Okay,
they
because
actually, they helped me with the writing of the rules. for
Okay,
the school.
because that was one of my concerns, that did they know what we were asking them to do?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, I need a motion for 580.
We have
We did vote on it?
No.
No,
but
I,
she made-
I'd made a motion and I'm to interim study, and I believe we had a second on that because now the amendment's been introduced, correct? No, all right. And
Okay.
if I may, once we're done with the amendment, I'll speak to the underlying bill. How about that?
I think we need a positive motion to accept the
So I would like a motion to accept amendment number 2026-0486.
We have to vote on the bill first.
Well, we have, Madam Chair, if I may, I believe there's a, if the interim study's been withdrawn, then we would need a.
No,
it
I have it
hasn't.
as withdrawn.
It's not been withdrawn.
Okay, so we have to vote
On
on
the
the
other
other
last one, other one.
and then,
Or
okay, we have
580.
to vote for that business first. Okay,
Can the,
so we're voting on the interim study right now.
Okay. Interim study has been proposed.
That's correct.
Okay, do we have a vote for interim study?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, it's 2 to 3, okay. Who wants to introduce a different motion?
I'd like to make a motion of ought to pass. And I'd like to bring, oh wait, do I stop there?
Not to pass. Okay,
I will second for purposes of discussion.
okay, second purposes of ought to pass, and now we have what, then we have the
And then I'd like to,
amendment.
yeah, I'd like to bring forward an amendment 2026-0486S.
Can I ask a question?
I think we have to accept it first. Okay.
And once it's seconded, you can go.
So if you look at the amendment on lines 9, I guess I'm just trying to figure out when is this going to be used? I understand that if they want to, districts want to share costs, they can enter an agreement, but with the receivership,
So line 9 is only on the amendment you're talking about?
well, it had, the underlying bill had issues about when, so that's page 4, lines 23.
You're on the underlying bill, not
We're on
the
the
amendment.
underlying,
So that whole section is eliminated by the.
right. Place
Yeah.
section 3.
That was my biggest concern.
Okay.
That section, I'm just wondering,
So, yeah, and that was, again, discussions with the Department of Education, putting in rules around what the duties of the school board are, local school board are.
Okay. Do I have a motion on the amendment?
Yes. Ought to pass.
Okay, I have a motion about ought to pass on the amendment.
Yep.
Any further discussion on it?
Oh, okay.
Okay, so who is in favor of ought to pass on the amendment?
I'd
It's 3 to 2.
like to make a motion of ought to pass as amended.
So we have the underlying bill 580. Vote on it, the underlying bill with the amendment. All those in favor of ought to
Oh, we
pass?
need-
We need a
We
second.
need a second, and I have something to say. Where?
Senator Abbott seconded.
Senator Ward, if I may, just my opposition to this solely comes from the basis of that I think that this can be done now, and doesn't require legislation to do it. That's my opinion. So I appreciate the intent and understand the intent, but that's where I'm going to stake out my claim. Thank you.
Now we can vote.
So are we ready? Ought to pass with amendment. Who is in favor of ought to pass with the amendment?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, there's 3, 2, okay. Thank you. Let's see. You want to take it? It is your bill. Do you want to take it up?
Sure, but you'll be tired of listening to me speak that day.
Okay. Is there anything else that needs to come before the committee? Other than that, I have to thank you. You've done a good job. We got all of these bills taken care of. And we're just waiting for the rest of it to come through.
So move, second,
What was the movement? What was the movement?
out of executive session.
All those in favor of exiting executive session?
Aye.
We are out.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor of adjourn? Thank you.
Like, we did pretty good. We only disagreed a little.
I agree.